Welcome to our broadcast. I'm your host, Sarah Vaezi, Chief of Digital and Growth Strategy for Providence. As a reminder, the information provided during this event is for informational purposes only. For any medical questions, please reach out to your primary care or healthcare professional. Now, let's begin. I'm really excited to talk with Derek Street, who is the CEO of DexCare today. And today we're going to be somewhat celebrating the 1 year anniversary of DexCare. So really excited to talk with you, Derek. Thanks for joining today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited about it as well.
So Derek, can you just quickly introduce yourself, reintroduce yourself to the folks that are watching today, and remind us what DexCare is and what you all do?
Sure. Derek Street. I'm a technology entrepreneur and currently the CEO of DexCare. So DexCare is a spin out of Providence Health System almost exactly a year ago today, as a matter of fact. So it's quite literal. We're a software platform that orchestrates both the demand and the supply side of healthcare. That's our core product as a company. We're a data-driven intelligence company focused on improving healthcare access for everyone, patients, providers, and health systems.
Awesome. A year ago, we had this conversation with you and Sean O'Connor, who is part of your senior management team. And we chatted about how, you all were starting up DexCare and spinning it out of Dig. A lot has happened since then. What are you most proud of, like headline or otherwise? What's something that really stands out to you from the last year in terms of everything you all have accomplished?
Yeah, it's been a bit of a rocket ship, riding a rocket ship, and it's been a lot of fun, and that's because there's been a lot of success in the organization, and so some of the headlines are that we service now several leading health systems around the country. I think the vision that you, Sarah, and Aaron, and others had, that this is something that could be of value to the industry as a whole, has been spot on. And so we work with organizations as large as Kaiser, on a national basis, and all the way to smaller academic centers like a Rochester, and large regionals in between. So just finding the adoption among health systems has been great. That obviously translates ultimately to users, patients, and providers. And the fact that now we've been able to do, I think we're approaching a million visits now through the system across all of our providers now. Those are real patients that are being helped through the system, and so that's been great as well. A continuation of the really good results and really spectacular results that you all experienced at Providence, in attracting new patients to a health system through this platform, getting them to the right care, making sure that they're matched and balanced with providers in the right way. It's been great to see those replicated in other health systems as well, even ones that, obviously, Providence has used this for several years at this point. Some of these health systems have just been recently onboarded, but we're able to see these kinds of results very, very rapidly. And then I would say, finally, probably the thing that's most that we're enjoying the most, there's the growth of the company and all the things as well, is that the satisfaction that patients are getting, that our health system customers, patients are getting using the system, has held really strong. So it was in the 90s out of 100 when we were inside of Providence, and it's in the 90s out of 100 with other health systems as well. So that's probably the most important stat to us, because it shows that it's delivering value to patients, which is the most important thing at the end of the day.
That's awesome. And we're probably, for folks who are following like the digital health landscape right now, at the peak, or maybe on this sort of the downslope of this hype cycle around digital health. And there are questions about whether digital health companies are actually delivering value and being scaled and adopted and utilized across their health systems or otherwise by consumers. But DexCare has really achieved something through all of this work that you're doing with your health system partners that's unique. How you've gotten a tremendous amount of growth, collaboration, investment. Y'all have raised $70 million in the last year from the venture community, from the industry. You just have a tremendous amount of support and momentum behind you. Kind of why do you think you've been able to gain this level of interest and support from the market when there is so much hype out there?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. Having been building companies now for a couple of decades, I mean, you like to think it's all execution and team and so forth, and that's a big part of it. But so is opportunity, and so is luck. And sorry, you've had a front row seat to this and one of the architects of the vision and the strategy for this for a while. So you know this as well, and we've just had all three of those things happen. Actually, in my experience, you have to have all three of those, otherwise it doesn't really come together. And so we had a great foundation with the work done within Providence, and just knew that we were addressing material problems within a health system. That kind of privileged access, if you will, for building the company and solving the problem was really important. Um, like many organizations in digital health, COVID was wind in the sails for this organization, but it turned out to be wind in the sails in a different way, and that is that we had predicted, and it turned out to be right, that COVID was going to create that the aftermath of all this was going to be, it was going to create more confusion, more optionality for consumers and providers and health systems coming out of it. That we never believed we were going to go to a fully virtual world now, and we didn't believe that virtual was going to go back in the box, for example, that it was going to be end up multimodal and multi-setting and multi-provider, all those things. And that's in fact what we've seen. And so creating a product and a system that enabled all of those different solutions that health systems have, and the things they're trying to solve for different service lines, to work to actually work and be successful in what they're doing by getting patients there and routed to the right place, and kind of matching up that supply in the back end, actually making those multitude of assets work really well, turned out to be the right bet and something really, really important to health systems. And then the final piece is luck. We were, as I mentioned, we started working with some other health systems, kind of early to kind of middle of last year, some very large health systems, and just it turned out that their priorities lined up really well with what we were able to do, and that timing, some very hard dates that needed to be achieved in order to help those health systems deliver on their large commitments to employers and plans and so forth, lined up really well with a small, hungry, scrappy, well-financed company that was ready to bend over backwards to deliver for them. And so we did that, and you can't predict those kinds of opportunities, but you can definitely take advantage of them when they present themselves, and we did that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you referenced a couple things that I wanted to go a bit deeper on. One of the things that you referenced was this, hybrid, multimodal, multi-setting environment. And at Providence, having a solution like DexCare helped us respond at the height of COVID to a real surge in demand for telehealth visits, and helped us capture downstream revenue thanks to acquisition of new patients through the platform. 30% of the patients that we're seeing through the Express Care service line, which is enabled by DexCare, are new to us. So part of that is being incorporated and integrated through this with this multimodal, multi-setting hybrid lens applied. What would you tell health systems, or what do you do when you talk with health systems who say things like, oh, well, we have, on-demand telehealth, or we're able to connect with our patients through video conferencing? One is sort of like this point, they have a plethora of different point solutions, or they've got like the technical like infrastructure and capabilities to do these things. What would you tell them that's different about DexCare that like enables them to do something different in this hybrid environment?
Yeah. So, and that gets to kind of a key evolution, if you will, for the strategy of the business, the product and the business that we went through in 2021. And it was this realization that, and it sounds kind of goofy to say, but not all people just not everybody just sort of gets it gets it innately. Is that if you're making all these investments and all these solutions, like at the end, what you're trying to do is you want to make them work. And I guess again, it sounds goofy to say, but you assume if you're spending all this money on all this different technology and doing all the change management, it's very expensive to the hard and soft costs of doing anything digital inside of a large complex organization like a health system. It's very expensive. And so you want these things to actually work. And so we started just deconstructing that and again getting very kind of direct and simple about it. And what does make work mean? Well, it means that people know about it in the first place. Again, sounds simple, but I think we all know that it's a I think a trap that a lot of health systems fall into is they get a shiny new object, and I call it sort of the Christmas tree effect. It's like Christmas tree, and now it's a new ornament, and you hang it on the Christmas tree. You put it on the website, and it's a new link, and you got to. It sounds kind of like other things, so you got to figure out a synonym that's different than the other things that you put on there. And if you just put it kind of on your website, for example, people aren't going to necessarily discover those things, and so you have to make it where it has to be discoverable. The second thing is then, once people have discovered this option that could be really, really helpful to them, it's got to be aligned with the intent and motivation, preferences of the consumer, as well as the clinical need, obviously, and then also what the health system and the providers are trying to accomplish as well. And so, particularly in low acuity care, if you just sort of leave it to the options that could work to get some form of care, it's kind of always going to be the same answer, right? It's kind of like, well, everything works, right? You could see any provider, you could go in person, you could do video, you could do this, and so you're looking at the Christmas tree, and every ornament kind of makes sense at that point. And as a result, that's what I was saying earlier, that too many options create all of this confusion and cognitive load that people can shut down on. So routing the safest and best care option with the right data, the intersection of those data to get to what's really best for the consumer is really important as well. And then the third and final piece of what we've figured out, we've identified how health systems define sort of make work is ensuring that the ultimate matching of that care setting, modality, and provider is done in really the best way possible. So it's using the same data that I mentioned earlier, but even going a level deeper. And so some of the technologies that we've built, we've really kind of invested in since we spun out, for example, are training up algorithms that will predict visit duration if we match certain patients and providers, or will predict a percentage chance of resolving the issue for that patient within one visit instead of multiple, or will predict satisfaction scores and things like that. And the good news is that even though there's lots of variability among these different resources in the health system, these things are predictable. There are certain data that are higher signals than other on those things, and so you can do these matches in a just much more intelligent way than it happens today. And all of that together results in, we believe, and the data bears out this way, that is really better access for consumers and providers and health systems. Because what it means is that people that would not have known about what you can do for them now know about it. They don't have to necessarily come to your website. They can be searching on Google or whatever. And it means that when they get there, they're going to get the stuff that's right for them. And then it means that they're going to be matched up with the providers that are best for them as well. And when we think of, you could kind of think of it as personalization. We're fine with that as well, but we're careful to say it's not just personalization for the patient, but it's also the provider and the health system. The provider, I mean, we work with health systems today that have very novel applications of this platform in specialty areas, for example, where they've been able to use this platform. So Freighter, for example, in the orthopedic space, use this platform to ensure that people that need to see an orthopod because they may
Yep.
need surgery or so forth, do that. And the ones that most don't, they actually get to physical therapist. That enables everybody to operate at the top of their license and not waste time and energy. And people aren't doing multiple visits and all those things. And so it's personalizing the care for the workforce as well as the health system, what they're trying to accomplish, so that everybody wins at the end of the day. And to come back to your question specifically, my point is you have to, if you've got a bunch of care delivery solutions that if you just think sort of common sense about what you're trying to do, what you're really trying to do is what you care most about is making those solutions work. And if you're going to make something work, it's very rarely about the delivery of that solution. It's about all the things around it,
Yeah.
discoverability and matching and all those things that really have the big impact you're looking for. I mean, a video visit platform is a video visit platform. But the things around it are the things that will ultimately make those things work. And that's what we focus on.
Got it. That's awesome. So with this sort of uh, lens applied around it's all of these things, it's about making it work. Do you have um, any customer anecdotes, whether with the end user or with your other health system partners, that you can share with us around what's working for them? Something that's been like truly uh, uh, transformational, or just really a moment of success that you're particularly proud of that you can share?
Yeah, I'll give you a few. So we work with Kaiser, I mentioned, and so we power virtual urgent care for Kaiser patients across the country right now. And as we're doing this session, as we're doing this session at this moment, there are patients, just because of the scale of Kaiser, there are patients that are being matched with providers around the country that that have multi-state licensure and can service those
Mhm.
patients, and doing it again utilizing the kind of data that I mentioned earlier. So what's important to the patient and what's clinically important, what's important to the health system and the providers as well. Um, and one of the things that's really important to the health system, as you can imagine, and providers as well, is balancing load basically, or making sure that there's not excess utilization in one place versus another. I mean, particularly in the environment we're right in right now, where the healthcare workforce is just stretched so thin, coming off
Yep.
surge after surge and COVID and so forth, that enabling people to have a little bit of a breather, providers have a little bit of a breather to not completely burn out is really important. So making sure you're kind of balancing that load is really, really important. And we do that for like I said, as we're talking right now, that is happening in a very intelligent way, so that we're able to actually see that imbalance in kind of utilization of the resources, the supply side and the demand side is getting more aligned. That's one example we're really proud, because we've been able to do that in scale and really show the value there. Another, I alluded to it earlier, the work we do with Freighter, incredibly innovative health
Mhm.
system in the Wisconsin market. We weren't even moving into specialty care when they came up with the idea to do same day orthopedic care. And they're so innovative over there. Mike and Darius and Milliken team over there just took the platform and ran with it and said, we can take the convenience and the discoverability and the access and all the things you're doing for kind of retail and urgent care and virtual care for us. We can apply those same things in maybe even a more powerful way in the specialty area, to again allow people to operate at the top of their license, not have redundant visits that waste the patient's time, getting people to the right care at the right time. So very, very proud of kind of where they've taken the initiative to take the platform. Um, and then I'm also proud of the fact that we've been able to we've been able to I think inspire health systems to have the conversations about how to do things differently, right? And so,
Mhm.
for example, we work with Houston Methodist primarily in a same day and kind of virtual setting right now. But as we've been getting closer and closer to that organization, it's a great team there. Steve Spielman and Dr. Pletcher and the whole team. They're a very kind of open, innovative team. As we look at other areas to expand primary care and things like that, we're finding ways to work together and collaborate with them. We actually have a separate kind of strategic collaboration agreement with them to rethink those service lines as well, and apply the same principles that we have to some of these higher velocity service lines to those as well. So kind of the innovation among those groups. And in the interest of time, I won't go through others, but I would wrap that all together to say what's been most inspiring is to see health systems take kind of the kernel of what we've built here with DexCare and just run with it to start kind of pushing us to be better in other areas as well and applying to those other areas as well. It's why you mentioned the $71 million we raised. That's a lot of money to raise in the first year of a company's existence, but we did that because the customers, the health systems, and their patients and providers have needs in these other areas to apply, all this goodness that we've been able to do in kind of lower acuity lines.
That's awesome. That's such a cool example of just like essentially you're creating almost like you're fueling innovation simply by um, getting systems to adopt a technology and then be able to organically, kind of define what's the next business model or line of service line that we can enable with these capabilities around discoverability and demand aggregation and matching supply to demand and navigating people. So that's so cool, and I love that example, and I love the Kaiser example too. It's like if you think about it, it's just the concept of a national network that
Mhm.
that really works for health systems, as to some of the sort of point solutions that are disconnected from the health system that are out there. So those are great examples.
Yeah.
Um, so you've talked a lot about like the successes and the really cool stories. What has been like an unexpected challenge or something that surprised you this year, that you would be willing to share with us?
Um, yeah. So, well, it's a couple of things. So it's always hard. It's always hard building a small company, and it's exceptionally hard doing it in healthcare. So, um, I don't know that they're surprises necessarily, but it's always challenging. And there's the standards kind of sales cycles, and for all the goodness that we just talked about, it's still months, years of conversation, to work through those things. But it's really important work, right? And it's potentially, lucrative business as well. So it's worth doing that. This is the last business I did was more in the surgical, was in the surgical surgery space. This is the first one in the access space. I will say it has been surprising to see. You alluded to it earlier, Sarah, just how many solutions there are. If you just sort of say digital health, I like to say, it's a big Venn diagram, right? I mean, if
Yeah.
anybody, I mean, everybody has some overlap with everybody out there, us included. And and so it's amazing to me just how robust the space is. I think that's a good thing. I think it drives innovation. I know every company says that about competition. Oh, don't worry about it. It's a good thing. But I really do think it's a good thing. It is also good for us from a business standpoint because that complexity is something that we're able to help address and make
Yep.
sense of. We really, I mean, if you take virtual visits, for example, I mean, we have an
Yep.
application there, but if the health system wants to use, another platform, they certainly can. And again, we focus on those things in between and around. So I think it's a good thing, but it has been surprising to see just how much innovation in the access there has been in the access space. And how kind of how many options are out there. I think it can be really tough for health systems because they've got that, plus they've got their underlying EMR as well, which they're rightfully making significant investment in as well. So that just that adds to the complexity and the decisioning that needs to happen. Complexity again is good for us because we can make sense of it, but that's been a bit surprising to see. I think also the other. I was just talking with a CDO this morning about this, who also sort of came from tech, and we were sharing this similar anecdote. Like it's been also surprising to see how on the access side, it's incredibly high reliability. Now, you that should be common sense, right? It's healthcare. Everything matters in healthcare. It's very important. But I think it's one of those things where you could also, I think, understand common sense wise that when most care that somebody is getting in a retail setting or something like that, or a primary care checkup or things like that, it's often not life or death. If it was life or death, that would be a big problem. So thankfully, it's not. Um, However, it could be life and death, and
Mhm.
as a result, it is a truly high reliability industry. I mean, I think it has a lot of the same aspects of managing nuclear power plants and things like that. Not technically, but kind of a zero kind of failure tolerance. And we deal with this with our customers all the time. And it's one of the reasons why the system we have, as you know, Sarah, was built from the ground up to be heavily integrated in the EMR, keeping that as the system of record, not duplicating things. I mean, making sure identity is something that's common across the systems. I mean, there's all these things that it would be really easy, I think, to look at the space and say, well, it's not surgery. Like, everybody's not always having surgery in what you're doing, and it may just be a checkup here or there. And in the technology world, this is the conversation I was having someone earlier today. In the technology world, you argue about how many nines you have, after the decimal point for your uptime on your servers, but there is some level of nines that everybody accepts, right? There's a point where it gets sort of absurd to keep going. And in healthcare access, because not everything, and in fact, most things are not life and death if things are going well, but they could be life and death. That level of reliability and zero tolerance that that needs to be respected has been surprising. Now, the upshot of all that has been, and this is, I said this, but I'm glad I got involved with DexCare years after, sorry, you and others had done it, because I'm not sure I would have had the patience to do all the work that you did to make sure it had that reliability baked in. But you did a really good job with that, and that's turned out to be a pretty key differentiator. But it's been surprising that it needed to be that much of a differentiator. But I'm glad that it is, basically.
Got it. That's awesome. Yeah, I think in some of these, in the access space, that can be somewhat taken for granted. So that's that's a really interesting takeaway. We're almost out of time, Derek. So I just wanted to wrap by asking you, what's next for you all? You've had a really exciting first year. You're well financed, and I'm sure you have big plans coming up. So can you share a little bit with us about those?
Sure. Yeah, we're maniacally focused on this mission of improving access for everyone, and really looking at personalized experiences from multiple dimensions: patients, providers, and health systems. We think they all need to work together well, and we're just incredibly focused on that. To get there, it'll be doubling down on areas that we've seeded and are growing rapidly. So I alluded to some of them earlier. Ensuring that our intelligence engine that does all of this matching within a combination of rules and algorithms continues to factor in the right data to be able to make decisions better. We don't believe that these machines are going to replace a lot of the clinical decisioning. In fact, and that's another discussion, but the data, I think, shows pretty well that pretty conclusively that often those things, you still need a human in the loop, basically. But there are a lot of other kind of data that we talked about, utilization, other things that can ensure that all of that works well for everybody across the spectrum. So further doubling down there, which includes a combination data sets and technology to do that. And then one of the reasons we did this growth round that we just closed right at the end of the year was to further this expansion into these other service lines, really across the health system, that our customers are already pulling us into. And so we want to be purposeful about that. I mean, it's great to have the opportunity, but you don't always want to be reactive to it. And so you want to be ahead of the curve there. And we're just finding, I will say this, there are very few areas we're finding where access couldn't be better, right? I mean, I think it's easy to look at particularly highly specialized areas and say, it's just the way it is. It's so big and serious that, yeah, you've got to it takes months to get an appointment and to do this and to do that, and it's very complex and so forth. We still think those things can be better, right? We think options can be more discoverable, and matching can be better and more appropriate and things like that. And so you're going to see us expand into these other service lines and really across health systems, even more so. And then I think the final thing you'll see with us is is there's a lot of really good, really powerful tech that's been created to power these experiences for health systems. We think that that components of those technologies could be of value to the broader ecosystem as well. And so, you know, if you've today, you know, a lot of our value proposition in the health system is, as we talked about earlier, let's help make the things you have work a lot better because you're investing all this time and effort and money. Let's help it make work better the way I mentioned earlier. I think tomorrow you'll start to see situations where the health system says, "Well, I have this, that, and the other," and we'll be able to say, "Well, that's great." Because it turns out that you're able to embed this piece of our technology in that thing that you already bought, and now instead of just matching, for example, clinically on a symptom checker, you're able to do this, that, and the other as well, and factor
Mm.
that into the equation. So that ecosystem is something that we're putting a lot of thought into kind of building out right now.
That is super exciting. I'm so looking forward to seeing everything y'all are going to do over the next year, and maybe we'll do a 2-year retrospective and see and talk about the progress you'll be making going forward. So, Derek, thank you so much for joining today, and to everyone for listening. And if you're interested in learning more about initiatives, programs, services, ways to give, or if you're looking for medical care, please visit providence.org. And make sure to follow us on social media at Providence Health System for LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, and under Providence on Twitter. Thanks again, Derek, and thank you all.
Thanks, Sarah.